April 24th URA meeting. Can we get a roll call, please?
Agency member or Chair Frieden,
I'm here.
Agency member Blum.
Here.
Agency member Letts,
Here.
Agency member Ross,
Present.
Agency member Cobb.
Here.
All right. Everybody's here. Good to see everybody. Is there any visitor communication for this meeting?
There is none.
Okay, thank you so much. We have a consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on it? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It was everybody. Great. Looks like we have a little agency business, hence the meeting.
We do.
This is fun stuff, by the way. I
Yes.
just want to say,
Yeah.
I
So
like it too.
Yeah.
It's almost a consensus. All right, well, let's get started.
Hi, board chair and members of the Sisters Urban Renewal Agency. This is a workshop. This is on the workforce housing grant. We did receive one application. So Scott Woodford is going to review sort of the program criteria and the application requirements and kind of do an overview of that program. And then we have the applicant here tonight too to present their proposal. And it's an interesting setup, as you saw on the agenda. 4 p.m. is the Urban Renewal Agency meeting, which we have about an hour from 4 to 5 o'clock to talk about the workforce housing grant program, what the proposal is, what the application is. And I think we can probably dive a little bit into the affordable housing program at that time, just in the sense of looking overall at the project proposal, since both applications to the city for the affordable housing program and the workforce housing program are for the same project. And then at 5 o'clock, we have a workshop, city council workshop, where the first portion of that workshop is on the affordable housing grant program. So we'll try to keep things straight, but we kind of expect that we don't want to duplicate the same presentation or anything like that, given that it's the same project. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Scott, and he'll kind of give you the overview of the program and the criteria, and then we'll proceed from there.
Given the fact that we have two different programs and one applicant, we are going to kind of develop the presentation into one. Technically, the URA is only really. Sorry. Thank you. Is only charged with making decisions about the workforce housing program part of the request, and then followed up later. We'll talk about the city council will take up the issue of the affordable housing request. But as Jordan said, since they're essentially the same project and the same applicant, there's going to be a lot of blending of the two. We have essentially an hour and a half to kind of talk about both between the two. And so I was planning to basically make a overall presentation with this first step, and then maybe we'll make a summary presentation when it comes time for the council portion of it, just in case someone from the public shows up at that time and is only interested in that portion. So I'm going to basically give a little bit of background on the process and the programs, and a little bit on the application. I'm really going to reserve that more detail for the applicants to come up and make the presentation on what their proposal is specifically. But I thought a little bit of background is due to make sure that we all know where we're coming from here, and what the different standards are between the two. We'll start with the affordable housing program. This one was established back in 2019. It's sometimes referred to as a grant program, but it's actually a grant or loan program. Can be structured either way. I think it came out of a situation where we were getting lots of requests from developers to waive system development charges for projects, and I think that it was a effort to kind of give some structure to those requests and to establish a fund to help pay for some of those requests. And it's funded by a percentage of the transient lodging tax, transient room tax, that goes into a fund and collects every year. And that fund is used to provide these grants or loans. It can be it can be used for either rental or ownership units for income qualified persons. And there's a definition of what income qualified persons means in the ordinance, the establishing ordinance. But essentially it's where the income does not exceed 120% of AMI for ownership units, but can go up to 150% for AMI for rental housing. The affordable period is how long that the expectation is that those units remain affordable. That's the term that's used in the ordinance. 10 years is what is in the affordable housing program, and that's discretionary. The council can shorten or increase that time frame. And then it also defines what they can use the money for, and those are qualified expenses, and that includes includes application fees for land use or building permits. Material supply costs could even be used for property acquisition. Most often in the past, we've seen it utilized for payment for the system development charges that are levied against each home during building permit process. So that's probably been the most common use of it. We also did give some money to Habitat several years ago for some utility work to replat some lots out at Village Green subdivision where they had originally had 6 lots and they replatted them into 10, and that necessitated some utility movement to help when the lot lines changed to accommodate that. So they were granted some funds for that at that time. Now switching gears to the workforce housing program, that was just recently established back in January, and it used kind of the affordable housing program that we have established as sort of the template and the model. We changed, most often we just changed council to URA, were the majority of the changes, affordable to workforce housing. But the program has its basis in the URA plan, the Urban Renewal Plan, which lays out a bunch of different projects or use of those urban renewal funds. And at one point in time, a project was added for workforce housing in the urban renewal boundaries in the amount of $400,000. And so we hadn't had any proposals on that, but we knew that there was some interest in the use of those funds, and we wanted to devise a way that access to those funds was available to broadly. So we set up a similar process for requests for proposals that we do for the affordable housing program, so that anybody could come forward and request use of those funds. There are some minimum requirements in terms of eligibility. You have to be a housing authority or an affordable housing developer, or in this case, a workforce housing developer, are the eligible the groups that are eligible for these funds. The income category, the income range is a little bit different, and given that it's workforce housing, workforce housing is designed for a little higher on the income range than affordable, which is typically 80% or lower. This is anywhere between 80 to 150% of the area median income. The affordable period, i.e. the amount of time which anybody who gets these units has to guarantee that they'll be affordable, is 20 years. But again, the URA board could shorten or increase that time frame. Qualified expenses in terms of what you can use it for, similar to the affordable housing program. So after we got the workforce housing program established, and then in line with how we traditionally have done the affordable housing grant, is that we put out an RFP to the community. We advertise it on our website. We try to make sure that folks that we know who do that kind of development are qualified or might be interested to share that via email or phone call, just to say, hey, we just want to make you aware that this is out there. And so the first one was affordable housing one was put out January 12th, closed March 1st. And the workforce housing one was posted February 1st and deadline was April 1st. And we only got one application for each program, and that was from Sisters Habitat for Humanity. I won't go into a lot of detail on the proposals, but essentially what they are requesting funds for is a proposed project called Adams Street Commons. And that would be comprised or developed on 4 different tax lots, as you can see in the picture here. And a total of 25 residential units, of which 19 would be considered affordable. And then up to for those making up to 80% of the AMI. And then 6 would be workforce housing units for those making 80 to 120% of the AMI. And there would be a mix of duplex and cottage units. We've shared the conceptual site plan with you guys this week, so you kind of get an idea of how they're laid out. The idea is that those units are not segregated to one lot or the other. They're mixed on I think all 4 lots. We'll find out a little bit more from the applicant as they give us a little more detail. And then they're in the form of duplex and cottage units. Units are, at least for the workforce housing units, are 850 to 1,050, but I did see a unit that was in the plans that was as big as 1,500. So I think a little more clarification from the applicants would be useful to kind of fully understand which units are which. And I just want to caution that this is a conceptual plan that we just saw for the first time. Got it Friday afternoon, so there hasn't been a whole lot of review citywide. We've met with the applicants, in some informal pre-application conferences, so we kind of had an understanding of what they were going to do, and vice versa. We gave them some feedback, but typically we would have them go through a pre-application process where we get some feedback. They get feedback, and might be some refinement to the plan, and they still have to go through land use. So just keep that in mind as you review it. Here is the site plan that you saw with how they laid it out amongst the 4 lots. One project, 4 lots. That's a little unusual. We don't typically see one project laid out over 4 different tax lots, but it's nothing against that. It just means that there will probably be 2 or 3 different land use applications. And so, what are they asking for? The workforce housing program request is for the full $400,000, which is the amount that we have allocated for that. And then the affordable housing program request from the applicant is $182,000 or highest amount available, which I believe last we checked is our fund is around $162,000, I believe. And so what we're asking for from the URA tonight, and followed that by City Council, is just basically to give applicant and staff feedback on how much funding, if any, would be dispersed to each request, and perhaps some feedback, some direction on the timing of when that funding could be available. And if we need a couple workshops, if one workshop isn't enough to do it, we can certainly do a couple workshops to get to that point. And then once we do have some agreement, we typically bring back a resolution and a grant agreement for council's final and URA's final review and approval. And with affordable housing funds, we do this right before the budget, so we know how much funds to budget in next year's budget fiscal year. And so theoretically, those funds would be available July 1st. And then the URA housing funds would be different in that my understanding is we would be establishing a line of credit to access those workforce housing funds. And I guess that would be a question for Joe or for Jordan in terms of how long that might take. So one thing we, in addition to how much funding that if any of the council and the URA want to put forth on these grant requests, is the timing. One thing that we have discussed with the applicants in terms of when the timing of that might be most appropriate, and keeping in mind that we don't have land use approval yet, and maybe not wanting to just provide approval for disbursement of funds in ahead of land use, and not having that string tied to it or that kind of issue already predetermined. You know, if a project gets appealed, you know, and it's back in front of council and you have already approved grant requests, grant funds, does that muddle or kind of muddy the land use process? So one staff recommendation would be maybe that those funds be, maybe there's an agreement to fund or something like that, but those funds be dispersed after land use approval and could be used at time of building permit for SDC offsets, something of that nature that would be useful to the applicant, but the time would be more appropriate, perhaps. So some things to think about. Any questions on any of that before we turn it over to the applicant?
What are the land use approval issues?
Well, I don't know. I haven't identified any potential issues yet, but you know, they would have to go through a cottage development and a subdivision process, and so haven't identified any land use issues as of yet.
So instead of issues, you just mean it's the process,
The process.
Okay.
Yeah.
the standard process, yeah.
And for future reference at another point in time, not today, I'd like us to examine the difference between the 90, whatever, the previous ordinance, 2019, I think it was, and this one for affordable, one for workforce, the difference in the duration. I think that, oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I turned it off. The difference in duration is confusing to me. I mean, I understand that's the way it is, but I'm thinking that at some point we may want to have a discussion as a group about making that 20 years consistent on both rather than 10 on one and 20 on the other. I can't see why we would want to have that differential, but
Yeah.
maybe there is a reason, but but that's not for today. I just want to get that in the ear of the city manager so that we can have that discussion at some point.
And obviously we can ask the applicant, what's their plan for the length of affordability?
Why? That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah. When they get up here, so. Does anybody else have any questions for Scott?
Yeah. On the process itself, so right now it's for affordable, it's anything up to and below 80% of AMI. And then for the workforce, it's between 80 and 120 AMI,
150.
50,
right?
150.
No,
The workforce.
no, on the video you just showed, it's 120 with the pictures that they're bringing forward.
Oh,
know
I'm
in the
sorry.
two
So yeah, there's a difference between what the program allows and what the applicant's actually proposing.
Right.
You're yeah, you're
And
correct.
so what I want to make clear is that what they're proposing, we're not going to increase it to what is the maximum between now and sometime in the future, correct? We're going to keep it at the 120, 80 to 120.
I suppose that's open for discussion, but that's, you know, that's the target that they're trying to hit.
Which is a good target.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other is outside of teacher affordability and, you know, when you're talking workforce, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's within our discretion to change it to 150 if we choose to do so?
I suppose so. Well, in terms of the money that, you know, the conditions that you place on that particular,
That
on
particular-
the money disbursement, yeah, you could, I guess you could do that.
All right,
I had one question, since Scott's still here. This is getting a little bit ahead, but looking at the site plan. I know a year or two ago, we added in the MFR that there were storage unit requirements, but this is not MFR. I'm just wondering if, I'm assuming that those requirements don't necessarily apply to these lands.
Yeah, it applies to multifamily.
Yeah.
Although I do note on the, if you kind of zoomed in on the plans, I did notice that they have a plan for some storage units adjacent to the parking, one of the parking stall or parking lot, kind of mini parking lots.
Okay, thank you.
all right. Anything else?
yeah, on the off-street parking, so on lot, I believe it was 1,700, the the one that's going to be the last that gets developed, and there's 4 units there. There's no parking, there's just bicycle racks. And I guess it's going to be off-street parking. So I'm just wondering the thinking in that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I saw that too. So maybe that's something that the applicant can, or the applicant's representative can address in their
Okay,
presentation.
sorry.
Yeah.
All right, anything else?
So Scott, thank you for sending it to us on Saturday. Hearing that you just got it on Friday. So it's basically as fresh to you as it is to us.
Correct.
So I think it's important for all 5 of us to keep that in mind.
Okay,
All right.
come on up. There you go.
Good afternoon, Peter Hoover, Sisters Habitat, Joe Rambo, Sisters Habitat, and Kevin Eckert with Build LLC.
Welcome.
Well, thanks for inviting us. You're hired. You did a great job giving an overview of the project. Not much left for me to say.
So I'm sorry to steal your thunder.
No. Habitat's a known quantity in the Sisters community. We've been here for over 30 years. We've worked over those years with the city on numerous projects. We have, as you are aware, actively worked diligently to expand our production, our housing production significantly over the last year. And we have been working for some time now to increase significantly beyond that last significant increase. And we hope to bring, as was presented, 25 homes to the Sisters community within the next 3 to 3.5 years after we get our funding in place from all the various entities. We're all very cognizant of the housing shortage, especially the affordable and workforce housing shortage. Something that really opened my eyes and may be interesting or helpful to you is there's the Beacon report, which comes out on a quarterly basis. And I was doing a presentation up in Redmond on Sisters Habitat and looking at the Beacon report for the fourth quarter of 2023, it was showing that the median home price in Sisters is $679,000. That's an increase of 67% in 4 years. And clearly wages have not gone up anywhere near that same percentage. It is, as we all know, become significantly difficult for someone to buy a home in Sisters if they are working in our community. Just to give you a sense, a household with an income of about $140,000, they would qualify conventional financing for a home priced about $525,000, way under what the median limit is. So the problem is there. To humanize it a bit, we talk about 120 to 150% AMI or below 80% AMI. But I would suggest that we all humanize it and we look at who is it? Who are the people that are impacted by this? And I will argue to you or present for your consideration that they're people that are essential to the success and livability and viability of our community. You're talking about medical professionals and support staff. You're talking about grocery store workers and the cashiers and the people who stock the shelves. Remember back to COVID and the empty shelves? Yeah, I'm not saying that it would return to that kind of scenario, but these are jobs that are essential to the community and these people need to live here. Teachers, emergency services personnel, refuse personnel, the people that pick up the garbage each week, the hospitality industry, which we're all aware of, Sisters is highly dependent upon. It's the servers, the chefs, the managers that are affected by this lack of affordable housing in the community. And so that's really who and what we're talking about, rather than just throwing out the numbers of less than 80% AMI or 120 to 150. We recognize that problem. That's why we have been working diligently to get to the point that we are today, where we can provide not a solution, but assistance in addressing the issue. We envision 25 homes, as Scott very eloquently pointed out. We are envisioning 19 of those homes as being affordable, which by our definition is less than 80% AMI. And I say by our definition, what it really boils down to is what the funding caps are. Much of the state funding that we have access to, that we could not do this project without that funding, caps affordable housing at 80% AMI. We also envision that there will be 6 workforce homes. The typical definition in the housing industry for workforce is 80% to 120% AMI. We'd certainly be very open to entertaining going to a higher AMI threshold or maximum, but that will in part depend upon other funding opportunities that may become available and what caps they may place on the AMI for workforce housing. One of the things that I think is very important, very critical for the URA and for the city to take into account is the length of time that you will have for return on the investment that you make in the Adams Commons project. We will be using a land trust model just like we have adopted for all of our homes going forward. What that means is perpetuity. They're 99-year leases. Should someone outlive their 99-year lease, they can always renew, but each time that a home sells, the lease period again reinitiates for another 99 years. So each dollar that you put in going to outlive all of us and be around for a long, long time to provide affordable housing in Sisters. Your minimum was 10 years. We're offering perpetuity on the affordable housing. For workforce housing, we will be 25-year minimum. We're examining whether it's best to accomplish it for the workforce housing through deed restrictions or through land trust. The land trust that we presently utilize would need to be significantly modified in order to accommodate the changes in AMI caps and pricing on the homes. Right now, home prices are set. There's several factors that come into play, but the home prices are set by what a household with 65% AMI could afford as a sales price. And so the numbers don't quite work to do that on the workforce housing. So, but know that it will be at least a 25-year restriction that we will be offering on we will be requiring on the workforce housing. Also like to point out there is significant leveraging for any funds that either the URA or the city may elect to provide to this project. We have applications in for $646,000 for land acquisition program funds through the state. We have local innovation and fast track application in for a little over $3 million. We have LIFT supplemental, again, that's the acronym for local innovation fast track for about $760,000. Sisters Habitat, we also have skin in the game. We're providing land, map isn't up there, but lots 1,000 and 1,100 have a current appraised market value of $1.5 million that we're bringing to the table. And we anticipate a direct monetary infusion somewhere in the range of $350,000 at the low end to $500,000 at the upper end. So this is a significant commitment. We're looking at $6.3 million basically leverage on top of whatever funds the URA in the city might elect to contribute to the project or grant towards the project. We have been working with Build LLC. I think Kevin Eckert is familiar to most of you. Build LLC is very familiar with the codes and the goals that the city council has. Our direction to Build LLC, which I'll say was not necessary to give because this is just the way that they operate. But the importance of incorporating the city goals of green space, density is provided by the cottage development overlay, sustainability, environmental sensitivity, the aesthetically pleasing aspects of exteriors that continue the Western theme, fire hardening, all the things that the city has identified in your goals is are items that we have taken into account and continue to work with our consultant to make sure that they are included in the final plan that will be brought forth to the city for consideration. Quite frankly, these funds are critical. And I'm not just saying that lightly. Affordable housing funds, whether it be grants or loans, are much more common, much more prevalent than workforce. Workforce grants, workforce funds basically don't exist. And so I commend the city for recognizing the need for workforce housing and the URA for recognizing the need for workforce housing. And just, I commend you for that, but also want to point out that in order for us to be able to build 6 homes, we need favorable consideration from the city. Otherwise, it just isn't feasible for us to do. So if you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to entertain questions. Otherwise, we'll turn it over to my compatriots. Any questions?
Yeah, why don't you talk and then we can do all the questions at one time.
Okay.
So go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, or any question over the specific, over the site plan, or I thought maybe we could,
Yeah.
excellent. Yeah, I thought we could go over some of the site plan or take this
Yeah,
time for any questions
go ahead.
now, or?
I prefer to go over the site plan and.
Actually,
do it
a lot-
all at once.
A lot of this is, we kind of presented back in November. And so this is just a little bit of an update of where we're at now, so.
So thank you all for the opportunity to share this with you today. There's a lot of information on this page. I'll break it down like this. We're in the downtown commercial zone. There are 9 bullets for the purpose of the downtown commercial zone, having to do with meeting various characteristics. We are achieving basically 8 of the 9. We're not speaking to tourism for this project, but we are speaking to the Western theme, the density of housing, pedestrian friendly. The goals laid out in this is just Development Code 2.4. There is 0 parking required for this project. So practically speaking, we're trying to get as much parking into this project as possible. The operating assumption under the cottage code is to create as small of lots as feasible. They are slightly undersized for what the cottage code allows, but we're taking advantage of the provision to reduce lot size by up to 30% for affordable housing, affordable and workforce housing. So that's what we're seeing up here as well. For scale purposes, since these don't have garages, these lots are less than half the size of the Woodlands cottage lots. So we're right around 1,500 square foot lots. A provision of the cottage code that was important to meet is that our footprint defines the second story, which could be no more than 50% of the floor below. So when we look at some unit plans, we'll talk about how that sort of has driven the 2-bedroom, bath-and-a-half program. Just kind of looking over our different overlays here. So downtown commercial overlaid with cottage development standards. And then we're also looking at doing, as been mentioned, 4 pairs of duplexes that then have to meet the duplex criteria for lot size, depth, et cetera. Just taking a look there. Let's see. Councilor Cobb, you asked about the parking on our leftmost parcel. We are in conversations with lots of other property owners in this area to try to acquire more property. This is the dirt we have today. The parcels Habitat's talked about they own outright, and the parcels that are under contract. Ideally, we would be able to even look towards getting more property and expanding the number of units, even mixing in more market rate to help subsidize the project. You know, there's other objectives that this group has in the background that we can't quite speak to today because they're not real yet. But that's why we've ended up with 4 units that would have bike parking and have to rely on street parking. Before we go into the next slides, the primary property, the east side of Larch, we're employing that lane. So that provides required fire access, that will provide sewer and water. We'll be working with Central Electric Co-op on how to service this through their easement process. It's a really skinny straw, but from our experience in other projects in Sisters Bend and Redmond, we feel like we're just right there to be able to properly infrastructure this project. Not a lot of margin, but it's doable. The cottages that are along that lane have parking opportunities in their front, just a little off-street stall. We are trying to fit as many carport parking stalls up there as possible off the lane. So currently we have 8 with storage at the foot or at the head, sorry. And then planning on using solar to provide at least 1 car charger there. Scott, do you mind going to the next plan?
Before you do that.
Yep.
Is it all right, Mayor, if I ask a question?
Sure.
Please talk into the microphone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so where those 10 stalls are, and you just said that it's 1 EV station for that
That we could
section
run off of solar,
that you would run off of solar?
correct?
Okay. Do you think there'd be fights over that? For the use of that? I mean, yeah.
I mean, we'll adapt as that adapts.
Okay. But my second question was, earlier it was mentioned that would be storage maybe off near that. Would that be up above where the little trees are there? Or the storage?
It's
that you're
kind
talking-
of at the head of each stall. There's that.
Oh,
little
okay.
band of building, 5-foot
Okay.
wide storage unit.
Okay, and so are those assigned to certain units? Because, yes? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I have a question for Scott. If you can refresh our memories, I know we have kind of an Adams Avenue streetscape design in place. And I remember, on this east side of Adams Avenue, we kind of went towards more residential versus farther to the west was more commercial and curb and gutter and all that kind of stuff. So can you, just refresh our memories on what the plan is for development of that street in regards to like sidewalks or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't have the street section right in front of me, but the intention, I think there was to have, the expanded and enhanced streetscape with sidewalks. I can't remember if they're the 6-foot kind of minimum or if they're something larger than that. But the street trees, and then instead of kind of diagonal parking that would occur west of Larch, there would be more of a residential kind of parallel park section through there.
East side is more residential, isn't it? Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, east side was intended to be, that's also the dividing line in our code in terms of
Yeah,
where,
but east side is parallel parking you mentioned, and west side, east side head-in parking, west side parallel parking is what I think I heard you
Yeah.
say, but my ears may be wrong.
I think you
Okay.
said the other way around.
oh, did I mix it up?
Well, no, I mean, I think you're saying on this end would in theory be parallel parking.
Correct.
Yes.
In other words, limited parking,
More limited parking.
compare it, more limited.
In front of a major complex.
In front of
Still
what?
confused what you're referring to, because I heard 2 different statements, so my brain has to process which one's not right.
Okay.
What street is the dividing line, east and west?
I believe large.
Large,
Yeah.
okay.
And so in front of the units that will have the 8 bays, and then the garages, so the tax lot 10, the big tax lot.
Mhm.
That comes down onto Adams. That will be parallel parking there?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then when we cross to the streetscape in front of the 6 units on the other side of Larch, that will be head-in parking,
Head in or diagonal?
Still parallel.
diagonal or parallel?
It's-
Yeah, because I don't think Larch was the dividing line.
I think it's Elm.
I thought it was Elm.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
First
Yeah.
Street.
Thank you.
First
So
Street
it'll be
goes.
parallel parking there as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't listen to me, listen to them.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I'll want to have answered before we get, I mean, I realize we're all conceptual here, and I got that.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of conceptual plans on what they look afterwards. They sometimes don't even look the same. So it is possible that we could help accommodate the cottage units with some street parking if we can't figure out a way to do off-street parking, although I would prefer off-street parking. Is that what I'm hearing?
If they can get more land.
Potentially, but they would not be reserved for any of those those homeowners, so that's an issue. But I conceptually like what I see
We should
conceptually.
We should go to
The,
the color
the
slide.
color slide's gonna help a lot.
Oh,
I
yeah, we
have
love
one
the
of those
color
slides.
slide.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So
It's just green. I don't think that constitutes just,
it's bigger
oh, okay.
instead of this, instead
I
of
was
this little
looking for
ants.
multicolour.
Well, and I like how there's green space in here. When you
Yeah, I do.
Correct.
You need green
Yeah,
space.
that's nice.
So our mode here is to get as many people under a roof as possible
Yep.
and accommodate as many of these darn cars as possible. But that's, that's 1 and 2. So in this case, again, with the property available, we can accommodate really nice 4 cottages. We're proposing a little bike structure for bike parking there. There's still plenty of common area to meet the requirement for how much common amenity area is provided. We elected to go to a townhome model we're still on the west side of Larch, but the eastern property here, simply because we could get a 1 car, about a car and a half garage in there with a parking space that's 20 feet deep on those driveways. So theoretically, we're meeting a lot of our need there.
The units furthest to my left, A units or whatever they were in the design, the cottage units, are those going to be affordable or workforce?
Most
or
likely
both?
A mix. The ideal is to have two and two.
Okay.
Is our
That,
aspirational goal.
okay.
Just for clarity and for full disclosure, part of the goal is to have them, oops.
You were on.
Just,
Okay.
yeah, just get close to it.
I couldn't see the red dot there.
None of us can.
Ideally, for, it creates a much better environment if you have a diverse income level. One of the realities that we have is depending on the funding source, the funds may limit to 80% AMI. So the process hasn't officially started yet, but if a parcel is bought entirely with funds through the state's LAP program, then we're limited to 80% AMI.
Yep.
Okay. What I'm hoping is that the state will allow us to say, this portion was purchased with your money, this portion was purchased with our money. And so therefore we'll have greater control over the ability to mix parcels.
The other component is balancing the partnership with the city and giving us the flexibility if the city doesn't deem that or doesn't want to participate, that gives us the ability to add in and more affordable housing and less. So we've got a little bit of latitude to go one way or the other. We are, as an organization, we are committed. We really want to address the workforce housing. We want to, so if the city comes back and we don't want to participate, we still hope to go forward with at least one as a trial, because it's all, there, as Peter was mentioning, there are plenty of sources for us to go out to find money to build affordable housing, and especially if we were in the rental housing market. But we're trying to address a need that is sorely lacking here, and trying to address the fact that looking at the demographics and people coming in over the next 15 years, we need more. We need more of what we haven't been able to do until now. So,
Amen. I think we are going to definitely need another work session when you get further down the road, because there is still some what ifs. We don't know exactly what's going to happen for sure. I, for one, am very anxious to get this money out there and to get housing built. And I'm very pleased with the idea of mixing and having some affordable and workforce housing together. I think that that's a great idea. Some of the things that I kind of asked myself as I was reviewing things is, you talk about applying our Western theme. In what fashion has the Western theme been applied?
do we have any?
We have some very initial clay models up here, but keep in mind that the cottage code requires that you cannot repeat a home in 3. So your 2 tricks are you vary forms and kind of use integrated materials, a la the Woodlands, or you have a very similar form and you have to manipulate your porch, your color, your other to meet that diversity. And these are just right next to each other, right? Like
Right.
barely even a streetscape. They're just right there. So I almost didn't want to show even the images I'm going to show today.
I just, not that I think it really needs it. It's kind of
Because-
off in a little corner where I'm not sure
Yeah.
anybody's going to go, oh, that doesn't have any Western themes in it. I just wondered, since you brought it up a couple of times during this, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to put an
Saloon.
ox.
There'll be a saloon there.
Yes.
They could just put a little
It's
wagon.
like
All the
doors.
front doors are.
Yeah.
No, they could put
Okay.
a wagon wheel on the side of each,
Yeah, okay, well,
Just a cottage size, you can have 4 wagons and a domed top.
Yeah.
I want to just be clear from my perspective. I know what conceptual is and I know what clay models are. And so giving us a look, I'm not going to hold you to what you show us, but I'm damn going to hold you to what you show us when it's ready.
right.
So.
And the issue about short-term rentals, it says there's going to be significant restrictions. Does that mean it's not banned?
Our community land trust, I'm sorry, not community land trust, the land trust document that was prepared by OHCS and that was recorded by Sisters Habitat back in 2021 provides for owners they have to be permanent residents and they cannot rent the property for more than 4 months out of the year. That's per OHCS. Certainly when we establish the HOA is going to attempt to
I want to hear the word ban. Let me hear it. Okay, you're going to try and
we're going to do
the
what
laws allow or whatever.
that's counter to what affordable housing.
Exactly. I mean,
Just for the record, there is some argument that I hear through various organizations that I participate in that short-term rentals, or if somebody departs the area to go take care of mom or dad, and they're going to be gone for a month or 2, that providing them an opportunity, a low-income family, to have the opportunity to have that additional income while they're not occupying their house helps create intergenerational wealth. So there is some balance there that has
Okay.
to be weighed into the equation. But no, we're going to do what we can to discourage short-term rentals because it is counter to the large picture.
Well, one of the ways to do it in an HOA document is to require a minimum rental period of 30 days or more.
Yep.
I've seen that done in, I have a house at the coast, next door is a condo, that's their language, nobody rents.
Right.
Yep. So that way, if you have vacancy, you want to rent it to someone for that period of time, intergenerational wealth, 2 months, I don't view that as a short-term rental. I view that as sort of someone's in the
Long-term.
neighborhood as opposed to somebody different each weekend or some period of time. But
We were
just,
looking at,
just be aware there are ways around that, but, I hear, and I hear what, I'm with you. The word ban really comes to the back of my head too.
we're hoping to do whatever we can to discourage, but I think Peter's alluding to, because there's a discriminatory case from a low-income homeowner that was unable to rent out their house because of, in an area that did allow that, so we're threading the needle through.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, I
And
understand.
again, because the master lease created by the state for the land trust says,
Well, as
The
I said,
provision
you
has
know,
a
I think the
provision.
way you do it is you do it with a minimal rental period. So
Yes.
very few people come in unless they're gonna spend the summer and rent for a long period of time.
Yep.
And so,
Good idea.
really, we're looking to have this not be a part of the vacation pool.
correct. And I can tell you from the experience of the 80 some odd homes that we have in the Sisters area, that there is not participation in short-term rentals amongst our homeowners. And I would expect that pattern logically would continue.
I had a couple questions. Do you have documented or anecdotal interest in this kind of model and, you know, these type of homes? I mean, I know there's a need for homes and roofs. You know, if you build it, will they come? You know, it's cottage, it's small, it's, you know, people are kind of sacrificing some amenities in this model to get as many on the lots as possible. So I'm just curious if there's kind of proven models where this is attractive to who we're trying to attract to this project.
From an experience standpoint, we can utilize the homes that we've developed in Clear Pine. Now granted, those are not cottage developments, but the homes that we developed in Clear Pine and the homes that we're developing in Brooks Camp / Village Meadows, they are of similar square footage to what we're talking about here. And there has not been a shortage of applicants. Also, anecdotally, to homes that Ben Redmond Habitat have developed, especially on 27th Street. They have a fairly large development there. And they recently announced that they were accepting applications for, I believe it was, maybe off on this, don't hold me to it, but I believe it was a dozen homes. They have plenty of applications.
Yeah,
And
I
again,
didn't-
they're similar in size to what we have here. So I would be it would be shocking to me. And I mean that literally, not just,
Yeah, okay.
I would be shocked if there wasn't.
It's just kind of a formality. And my other question is, since the property to your north is owned by, you know, basically Pacific Crest Affordable Homes, I'm assuming you've had a conversation with them. Yeah, I'm just looking at the layout. I mean, you're, you know, because of the design of the property that abuts them, you know, you're giving up a lot of property for the alleyway, for instance. And I was just wondering if there had been a conversation with that property owner to
The property owner to the north.
yes,
Met
to,
with him, help out my memory, 8, 10 months ago, a year ago, something like that. And we expressed our interest in partnering or having them sell a portion of land to us. And I'm still waiting for the phone to ring.
yes, and
Yeah, it's sort of what
that's
we do.
totally on brand.
Yeah, I know it isn't probably any of my business, but when you receive applications, do you give any bonus points to someone who is already living and working in the community?
That poses a challenge. Rooted
Yeah,
Homes
that's what I was
Society
afraid of.
Has a special exemption where they could, because they worked out an agreement with, I believe it was HUD.
Yep.
It was a multi-year process to be able to designate homes for teachers in the school district. What we envision is that there will be a point system, so to speak. And if you fit in certain categories, then you will get preference points or priority points, or kind of like the veterans preference if you
Mhm.
apply for a job at the
Right.
post office. Same, that would be analogous. But given the historical discrimination that has occurred, especially for people of color in Oregon, when I've inquired about residency requirements, it has been that could be perpetuating past discriminatory practices.
Mhm.
The other issue that comes to mind, excuse me, the other item that comes to mind is we'll use the scenario with rooted homes and designated homes for teachers. If you're trying to bring people into the community with certain skill sets, and those people aren't already here for a year, then you're reducing the universe of people that could be coming in and adding to the viability of the community. I
Yeah.
hear what you're saying.
Yeah, just, you want housing for the people that are living in the forest and working here and can't afford a place to live. It's
But-
tough.
But there are things that would, that, you know, for example, the area within which you pose, that you advertise is a word that's.
Your
to
outreach.
announce, the outreach.
Yes.
Thank you. The brain just isn't working there. Your outreach is going to determine, or have a huge influence on where your applicant pool comes from.
Excuse me, before we go any further, I just wanted to be a time hawk. We have about 4 minutes. Are we needing to make a decision on the workforce housing or concentrate on it?
The funding and the timing is what we're supposed to decide on.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to get to. Thank you. You know, I just want to make sure if we're going to stay on time for the next meeting, do we need to wrap
I
part
mean, I
of,
think this
part
is
of this
great-
up?
Great discussion. I think it's achieving the main objective is be able to review the application, ask
Sure.
questions, and then, like we said, we could schedule a follow-up workshop to talk about the actual ask and, you know, what's the board's feelings
Well-
on the application of the grant.
Yeah, you know, maybe it would be okay to take 1 minute and say, you know, what's available and what's the request, just so everybody knows. Can we just do that right now?
Sure, yeah, I mean, so in the urban renewal plan,
Yeah.
the list of projects is 400,000. That was, I guess, earmarked or identified, as part of our maximum indebtedness to go towards workforce housing. And so in January, the board established by resolution, the workforce housing grant program. Right now, the plan would be for the agency through the budget process to basically, pull a line of credit to have access to those funds in addition to other urban renewal projects that we have coming up in the next fiscal year. So the timing question is an interesting one because, you know, we would be, you know, be asked after the fiscal year when those funds would be available, but we would want a budget in our urban renewal fund, for
Right.
that. So kind of working backwards on that timing. That's why the April 1 deadline and why we're having these workshops so we can plan ahead for the
Sure.
next fiscal year.
And
so
the
their
applicant's request of those funds, is it the full amount?
It was, yeah.
Yes.
I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
You know, this is a public forum. I just want to make sure we're getting it all out there in a nice, easy way.
If I could just add a commentary or add a reality to it, is that because of the limitation of available funds for workforce housing, we won't be able to produce 6 homes without maximum funding.
Okay.
A reduction in the funding means a reduction in homes. I just
I-
gotta be candid with you.
No, and the candid part is super important because I want it just on, you know, pretty much on the record. So somebody who maybe isn't in this room, they go back and read the transcript. There it is. And we're just talking about workforce housing. In a couple of minutes, we'll kind of
Transition.
continue the conversation, concentrate on affordable housing while at the same time maybe doing the same process and wrapping it up so it's very
It-
plain language.
Would it help the board to understand? So is it linear in the sense of if there's 200,000, is it 3 workforce homes? And the follow-up question to that, you have a plan, the site plan is 25 units and a blend of workforce and affordable. Is it 25 units even if there is no workforce housing? It would be 25 affordable units? Is that okay.
Good
And
to
I
know.
think my question becomes, from your perspective of finalizing plans, doing the land use planning and those sorts of things, at what point do they need a definitive decision for the land use planning process? Do we care in the land use planning process, whether it's an affordable house, a cottage, or if it's a workforce housing cottage? I think from a perspective of land use applications and master plans, that doesn't really make a difference, does it?
Well, not typically, but only if they are requesting to utilize the affordable housing kind of bonus that we
Right.
created. So that, and they're asking for smaller lot sizes. So we would have to know that ahead of time. But it sounds like that, well, yeah, that would be
I just-
my answer to that question.
We need to take our time to make our decisions, and I get that. We need a workshop. We also I don't want to take and kick the opportunity down to Barkley and wait for Barkley to be improved for us to do something. So I want to be sure that we, going through our process, don't delay the work that they need to do to get this happening as soon as possible, if we decide to fund it. I'm trying to be
We're
non-judgmental.
running out of time.
And I have one financial question. This pool of money now is kind of fed by the TLT. What are we thinking annually is coming into that to fill it back up?
30, yeah, about 30,000 a year,
Okay.
that fund.
But this was the only application.
It was, yep. Well, for both the affordable and the workforce. housing
Right.
program, right.
So it's not like as if we had more applications and, yeah,
Right.
okay. I want to get. the
I would
money
love
out
to
there.
do a straw poll. I'm very confident in what I believe.
Yeah.
Is anybody else?
Are we supposed to decide during?
No, I
No.
think we can do a straw poll so that they
Oh,
have a sense of
Just
how
to
to
get a
move forward.
nod? Yeah,
We're not making any decisions today. We're
Yeah.
Not taking any action.
got it.
I'll lead this discussion. How about that? We created this fund to use. I see a plan that is very well thought out. Although conceptual, I'm very confident. I would feel comfortable releasing all $400,000 when they need it. That's just me.
The housing is necessary. We need to get the money out there. That's what we have it for. I see no reason given, unless something comes up in the process that is a red flag. At this point, I don't see any reason not to get the money out as fast as we can get it out. We have a reputable group of folks here that we haven't not had problems with in the past. I don't have any red flags yet.
And I myself will say that I've looked at a lot of conceptual plans. I've built buildings. I've seen this stuff go through the process. Everybody needs to know where they're at. From my perspective, what they said echoes exactly how I feel. That's what we have this fund for. I'm comfortable and confident that we have the right people at the table to pull it off. I'm looking forward to seeing the next iteration and to a point where we can make a firm decision.
I'm
wanna
in
add?
alignment. I'm in alignment.
Yeah, I think this is a very positive thing. You know, my questions are moving forward, just, a very longstanding and strong organization with nationwide roots. This is a pivot in what the organization has done in the past. So, that's a little bit of a concern to make sure that all the Ts are crossed and Is dotted and all that. There were no other applications. It was advertised for a long time and I'm kind of a person that likes to keep stuff in the bank for a rainy day, but we're in a crisis situation here, and so yeah, I would lean towards fulfilling the request.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this URA meeting. But I would say that it's a concern of mine and maybe others on the council that we're always not as nimble as sometimes we need to be. So if we need to be nimble as an applicant, just let us know and we will try to accommodate. We can't always, but we can at least try. So let's just keep that in mind as we're moving forward. And
I'll offer that we recognize that you're custodians of the city's money. You have a fiduciary and an ethical responsibility to make sure that it's properly invested, properly spent. And so we're not asking for you to make any rash decisions or hasty decisions. We'd like it to be thoroughly vetted, fully understood, so that everyone is comfortable moving forward.
yeah, and I think that the land use process will definitely be part of that. And I think that the final decisions will be made with even more information than we have now. So, but we appreciate this, and we're going to end this URA meeting. and we're gonna do a workshop in like a minute. Does anybody need a little break? We can certainly do